1941, the Soviet Union. For months, the Soviet leadership refuses to heed warnings from the Western powers of the German troop buildup along its western border. Thus, when on the 22nd of June 1941, Germany and its Axis partners invade the Soviet Union, they achieve almost complete tactical surprise. Much of the existing Soviet Air Force is destroyed on the ground, and the Soviet armies are initially overwhelmed. German units encircle millions of Soviet soldiers, who, cut off from supplies and reinforcements, have few options other than to surrender. As the German army advances deep into Soviet territory, SS and police units follow the troops. The first to arrive are the Einsatzgruppen, the Nazi mobile death squads, who will conduct the mass shootings of Jews, communists, and other persons deemed to be dangerous to establishing long-term German rule on Soviet territory. Shortly after, on the 19th of September 1941, German forces enter the city of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. Among the Ukrainians who have decided to remain in the city to fight the German occupiers is a young woman who will mercilessly kill more than 30 Nazis. Her name is Tatiana Markus. Tatiana Markus, one of 6 children of Jewish parents, was born on the 21st of September 1921 in the city of Romani, then part of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. A few years after her birth, Tatiana's family moved to Kyiv. In 1938, after finishing 9 classes of secondary school, Markus started working as a secretary of the personnel department of the Southwestern Railways, the company which administered railway infrastructure and rail transport in Ukraine. The Second World War began on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. Less than 2 years later, on Sunday, the 22nd of June 1941, under the code name Operation Barbarossa, Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union, its ally in the war against Poland. At that time, Tatiana worked in a tramway and trolleybus park in Chisinau, the capital of Moldova, where she had been sent in the summer of 1940. The tramway and trolleybus fleet were managed by Georgi Levitsky, who became Tatiana's lover. After the seizure of Chisinau by the Romanians, who participated in the invasion of the Soviet Union alongside the Germans, Tatiana and Georgi returned to Kyiv, which was occupied by Germany from September 1941. Before the German invasion, some 160,000 Jews resided in Kyiv, which was approximately 20% of the total population of the capital. Following the start of Operation Barbarossa in June 1941, approximately 100,000 Jews fled the city or were already serving in the Soviet military. By the time the Germans occupied Kyiv, there were about 60,000 Jews remaining in the city. Those who remained were mostly women, children, the elderly, those who were ill, or those who had been unable or unwilling to flee earlier. Tatiana belonged to those who decided to remain in the city. While her brothers went to the front, other family members were hastily evacuated. In order to persuade her to leave the city, Tatiana's father Josef Markus returned to the capital. However, he did not achieve his goal, and the two began to participate in underground activities. One of the reasons why Tatiana did not want to leave the city was that she had become madly in love with Georgi Levitsky, who by then had become a member of the resistance. When she was actively sabotaging German plants or outright killing their men, it was Levitsky who covered for Tatiana and brought the matter to an end. Her most famous act of resistance occurred a few days after the beginning of the Nazi occupation of Kyiv, when Tatiana joined the crowd of people who gathered to greet a German military unit. However, she welcomed them in a very special way, tossing them a grenade which was hidden in a bunch of flowers. She killed 4 soldiers this way. A German tank started to fire upon the crowd, but was soon hit by a second grenade thrown by Tatiana's father. Then, Molotov cocktails thrown by other members of the underground flew towards the German soldiers. 20 Nazis died in total, and the underground members managed to get lost in the crowd. However, some weeks later, Tatyana's father was identified as a Jew and shot in the ravine of Babi Yar, just outside Kyiv, where approximately 100,000 Jews as well as Romani people, communists, Soviet prisoners of war and resistance fighters were murdered during the German occupation. After her father's death, Tatiana became further involved in the resistance movement and took on the alias Tanya Markusidze, the daughter of a Georgian prince who had been killed by the Bolsheviks. With this tragic yet fake backstory, she pretended to hate the Soviet Union and joined the Germans. Using the Markusidze identity as a cover, she was able to infiltrate the highest levels of the Nazi German military offices and SS commands in Kyiv. The trust the Germans placed in her allowed her to collect information about Nazi infiltrators in the resistance and continue sabotage activity. German officers were attracted by her beauty, and among her tasks was to seduce them. They would flirt with Tatiana and invite her on a date. She complied just to poison some of them herself, lure them to apartments where underground members were already lurking, or kill them herself after she had lured them into isolated areas. The weapons and uniforms of the killed Germans were taken away, as these were necessary in underground work. When she was hired to work in the officers' canteen, she systematically added poison to their food. Several officers died, but Markus left without suspicion. When someone in the crowd recognized her as a Jew, she would slap the person and defiantly say, "I am the daughter of a Georgian prince." Once, a German officer was sent to Kyiv precisely to find and destroy the underground organization in which Tatiana worked. The emissary from Berlin was found shot dead in his apartment after a mysterious stranger visited him several evenings in a row. The stranger was Tatiana. One of the last of Tatiana's victims was Obersturmbannführer Karl Stuckart, who was killed in his apartment. Tatiana's last task was to kill the traitor and Gestapo agent named Mironovich. She came to Mironovich's apartment earlier than the appointed time, and there was already a lot of wine and food on the table. Mironovich began to cut bread and asked Tatiana to help. She approached him, and when he bent down, she shot him in the back of the head. She then put a note in the dead man's tunic with the following words: "The same fate awaits all of you fascists. Tanya Markusidze." The reason why she left the note there might have been that one day earlier, her lover Georgy Levitsky had been killed and Tatiana suffered a nervous breakdown. Because of the note, the Germans knew who to look for, and Tatiana was forced to hide. For some time, she stayed in an apartment on Lviv Square, and then the resistance decided to withdraw her from the city and send her to the countryside to join the partisans. On the 22nd of August 1942, while attempting to cross the Dnieper River, the underground fighters were stopped by Coast Guard police. Having jumped ashore, Tatiana tried to escape. She ran to a house to hide there, but the villagers gave her to the Gestapo. Tatiana, who had killed 33 Germans and their collaborators, was interrogated and tortured for 5 months. The Germans tried to extract information about resistance members, as well as their activities and partisan bases of support. The abuse especially intensified after the Germans learned that she was Jewish. According to eyewitnesses, Tatiana was beaten until she passed out, then brought back to consciousness by being doused with water, and then beaten again. They put a red-hot iron on her face and chest, her hair and nails were torn out, and her breasts were cut off. Despite 5 months of brutal torture, she did not give her captors any names or information. The Gestapo could not even discover her real identity, still calling her the Georgian national Tanya Markusidze. When in late 1942, the Gestapo tried to intimidate the captured resistance fighters and threw Tatiana Markus into their cell, the severely mutilated Tatiana whispered to them the following words: "No matter how they hurt me, no matter how they are going to hurt me further, I will not tell them anything." This only strengthened the will of the prisoners. When Tatiana Markus was killed on the 29th of January 1943, she was only 21 years old. According to some accounts, her body was thrown into the notorious Babi Yar ravine, where over 100,000 people, including her father, were massacred by the Germans between September 1941 and November 1943, when Soviet forces liberated Kyiv. The Second World War in Europe ended on the 8th of May 1945, but it took decades until Tatiana's bravery was officially recognized. The reason that the Soviet authorities ignored her heroic acts was that she was Jewish. Only after the downfall of the Soviet Union was Tatiana finally acknowledged. On the 21st of September 2006, she received the title Hero of the Ukraine with a Golden Star for personal courage, heroic self-sacrifice, and invincibility of spirit in the fight against fascist invaders in the Great Patriotic War of 1941 to 1945. 3 years later, in December 2009, a monument to Tatiana was opened in Babi Yar, and in September 2011, a postage stamp dedicated to her was issued. There were many tears shed for Tatiana Markus.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.